talk to us just a little bit about what the goal is for ballot access. Then I want to play this clip of someone explaining their reason why there shouldn't be more ballot access. You can explain why that's garbage, and then we're going to show the clip of the absolute outrage of the day. So talk to us about the reason we need more ballot access. We're talking Tennessee, but just in general, why we need more ballot access. And you can talk, I mean, Tennessee's a mess when it comes to ballot access, right?
As of 2018, Tennessee was the third worst state in the entire country for the number of signatures required to get on a ballot if you were a minor party. Currently in the state of Tennessee, if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent, and you run with D, R, or I by your name, you need 25 signatures to get on the ballot. If you want to run with a C by your name for Constitution Party, or G for Green, or L for Libertarian, or K for Kanye West Party, then you have to have 56,082 signatures.
In Tennessee.
Yeah,
correct.
In Tennessee.
And the Tennessee Constitution calls for free and equal elections. So
it's kind of very much ironies.
Right. It's very much it's very much in opposition to that. And what he doesn't mention too, before we get to the bill, is that retention in Tennessee is absolutely abysmal. You collect those 56,000 signatures. If you don't run a candidate within a 4-year window for governor, for president, or for Senate and get 5% of the vote, they send you back to square one.
Yeah. The 5% threshold represents a twofold threshold. Okay. So on one side, it's your retention. You have to, once you collect the signatures, you have to run a candidate. That candidate has to pull 5%. If they don't, you're back to square one. Okay. That's the retention aspect of it. On the other side, there's being labeled a statewide party. If you are labeled a statewide party, you also are required to hold primaries, which cost taxpayer dollars, which gets a fiscal note put on your bill, which guarantees that it goes down. So the way the bill has been written, we separated those two numbers out, and we shrank the retention number down to 1% instead of 5%, which is still a very tough moniker to get in a state or a federal Senate, governor, or presidential race in a state like Tennessee. 1% is not a given by any stretch of the imagination. And it changes the number that would trigger the automatic primaries to 25%, which, it might be a little while before anybody gets to a 25% threshold in a statewide race, and that's going to not hurt the taxpayers for a very long time.
Right.
So, it's a good bill. Realistically, the crux of it is just making the number something that's manageable. Instead of 2.5% of the votes cast in the governor's race, we shrink the number to 0.5%, which changes it from 56,082 to, I think it's 11,281. It's 11 and change.
Which puts us on par with the national average for alternative parties.
Yeah.
Which is still like 500 times higher than the Republicans and Democrats have to do. So it's still putting you at a severe disadvantage, but not a prohibitive one that makes it where no one can actually effectively run.
It's notable too, if you know who Richard Winger is, who does Ballot Access News. He keeps a tracker on these things and is very aware of the ballot access requirements state by state. And we did a breakdown of what it looked like in 2018 when Tennessee was third. And there were 31 states that were 10,000 or less on their requirement, 37 states that were 15,000 or less. So it's not just an outlier, it's a 5 times outlier that is among a small group of other states that are also ridiculous outliers.
And you, so because that's third highest by the actual, like, by static number. By percentage, that's probably the worst, right?
That I don't know. I think that there are other states that have the same number in all actuality, but I think
it's the same percentage. Okay.
I don't know. Richard Winger would be the one to check.
Well,
we'll have it on our website.
Yeah, and we're going to have it on our website this week. We're about to post all those resources so that anyone can look at it. But I mean, think about it like this: in 2018, the only 2 states that were higher than us were Texas and California. Both of those states had 5 times the population.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're up there with them.
You're up among the worst, yeah.
Yeah, it makes no sense from a percentage basis at all, Spike. It's crazy.
So the legislation that you proposed basically it greatly reduced what those thresholds were, made it still hundreds of times higher than what, if you're a Republican, what you have to do. If you're an R or a D, then 25 signature. And stepping back for a second, this is me giving my personal opinion. There are some people that say if you want to run for office, you should be able to just say I'm running for office, and you sign a thing, and now you're on the ballot. That would create a situation where people could just be trolls, and you could have a ballot that is like a Bible, and you're just looking at hundreds or thousands of names. I understand the need to have some kind of threshold, whether it's 25 signatures, 50 signatures, 100 signatures, and it just shows a level of seriousness. 50,000 signatures is you now are spending more time doing that than being able to actually run for office against much more well-heeled and politically connected and well-funded opponents.
And keep in mind, you can run as an independent for 25 signatures. So in 2018, I think there were about 25 names on the ballot for governor. And there was a Democrat, a Republican, and 23 independents.
Right.
Yeah. And so it creates a situation almost like what you described, where the
threshold
still got
all you still got all the candidates.
Yeah.
It's just they don't have a different moniker by their name. It's literally just the letter by the name. It doesn't change anything else.
Right.
So your bill makes that easier for someone to be able to run as their actual party and reflect. Here is someone who at least didn't try to pretend that this was about free and fair access. Here is the argument that we heard from one of the Republicans at the legislative hearing today for your bill that was proposed. And I'm just going to, we can talk more about some of the subterfuge that happened afterwards, some of the absolute nonsense. But just here is what you're up against in terms of the justifications that they have for this bill. Let's listen to this for a second. It's about 2 minutes.
Here is what I'm wondering. I think in Tennessee, you got Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And to be perfectly honest, that's about the way Tennesseans think, out of one group or the other. They're either a Democrat, they're Republican, or they are an independent, which you can choose either one right now. Let's just say Libertarian or Green parties. I don't know which party would come closer to thinking like my party or your party, I don't know. But to add another party, to me, really takes away from all of us, from your party. When you put, somebody cut my mic off there, when you put a name on the ticket, if it's a Republican and a Democrat, an independent, Green Party, Libertarian, or whatever, people have tendency to vote with their group, more so in some ways than they do for the character of the person that's on the ballot. So I think what we're going to do is split the voters up more. And we're already facing issues right now with the voting. And I mean, I know you know that, a whole lot of issues right now. And I think we're going to create more havoc by adding another party than we are if you just look on the ballot, and if you are Republican, you like this guy, this lady, or if you're a Democrat, you like this fella or this lady, you're an independent, don't like either one of them. But when you add that other party, then you're going to take votes away from other people that really think and believe the very same thing. I just don't, I'm trying to figure out, why do we need another party with the system that we've got right now? And that's with all due respect. I appreciate your efforts here, but I can't understand what we are accomplishing.
So basically what he's asking is, why would anyone need to have more than two options? You can I'm curious what your response was to that. I certainly have my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear what yours are.
Well, obviously the system's working so well, right, Spike?
Right. Exactly.
Like, God
Everyone's
forbid
so
we
happy.
have alternative ideas. So that alone is kind of a crazy thought. But, our primary sponsor of the bill really, I think, was very poignant and intentional with what he said to that response. And what he said was, to date, from the inception of the state of Tennessee, there have been almost 40, 45 minor parties that have been involved in the political process at some point in time. And his response, and this is also my response, is that's the way our republic was meant to work. People are supposed to be able to form new groups, organize, rally around ideas. If they're not allowed to do that because there's institutional hurdles keeping them from doing that by design, as you could tell by Shaw's commentary, then our system breaks down like it has in the last 50 years, since the 60s when they passed this bill. So
he was brilliant. He really was. I wish we had that clip. I wish we
yeah, you can watch it on our website at 4ltn.org. Rep Halsey follows it up very well.
He did. He did a really. He's not the most eloquent man in the whole wide world, but he understands why this is right, and he fought it very well.
Whoa, gosh, that was the wrong thing. I'm gonna try my best to articulate the problem with even that question. He's presuming that there are essentially two ways to think about everything.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're some kind of weirdo who doesn't line up with this way or that way, or his people, as I think he put it, the people vote with their people, that was frightening. That if you aren't one of these, their group. If you're one of these weirdos that doesn't vote with your group, quote unquote, then you have this third option, and why that should be good enough. Obviously, that's garbage. There are at times 5, 6, 7 different arguments on even just a given subject, much less on how the entire state or government should be run. Also, the reason we have the division that we have in this country is precisely because of the false binary choice that's being presented. Instead of being given a bourse of options to choose from and having people all lay out their different ways of how things should be done, instead you now have your group red, your team red, or your team blue, your group R or your group D, and you have to hate each other. And of course, because those two parties are actually, there's less and less actual difference between them in policy, they have to make up for it with more and more theater of opposition, which creates even more fighting. This is all set up to divide us. The best way to end that division is to have as many different options as possible, to create as much nuance in the argument to begin with, so that it's not you're either evil or good, or you're either terrible or you're wonderful. There are all these different options. You can choose from any of them, and none of them make you inherently a good or bad person as a result of it. It is the antidote to the kind of division that we're seeing right now.
Or you could be part of an organization where all of your collective voters got into the same spot in order to force the hand of the people that hold office, making the party of the people that hold office almost moot.
Yeah, I mean that's and or, right? I mean we can do both.
Why? I mean, I get it, but if the way George Washington in his farewell address, now let me warn you in the most solemn manner of the bane of party, where he goes on and spends 750 words telling you, don't do it. Don't get sucked into these freaking parties. And here we are, sucked into the parties. George Washington all of a sudden sounds like a prophet. And we are literally trying to create something that counters the political party system by giving people the ability to come together around an issue and facilitating the things that they want and representing them, and trying to let them naturally form a voting bloc. We're just facilitators. That's all we are. It's oh, Spike, I so love this idea. I'm glad you talked me into it when we were in Dallas.
Yes, I'm so glad that I single-handedly, exclusively inspired both of you indivially and then collectively to do this together.
It was amazing.
I'm very proud to see my baby take off like this. I'm the light of the world.
Yeah, that commentary though on that bill today was very frustrating and disconcerting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was very sad. The truth is though, and I'm sure we're planning to get to this at some point, is that bill was set to pass committee. I mean, that guy was a minority voice on the subcommittee.
We walked in as the guy that does the Hill work. When we walked in, we had 5-3 on an 8-person subcommittee. And if you really listen close, everybody that said they were going to vote with us did. and somehow the nays still won it. So
yeah, we're gonna play that right now. So as Justin just said, walking into this, their vote count was that 5 were going to vote in favor of this, in favor of loosening the ballot access restrictions.
Right.
3 were going to vote against it, including the one that you just heard speak. And here's what happened, and you can listen for yourselves.
Cool. Seeing none, we will proceed to vote on the bill. All those in favor of the bill say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. Bill fails with no. Sorry, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
So you can see his hesitation.
Yeah, so he literally just lied.
Yep.
You won this. Your bill should have passed, but he literally just said, "Nah, I heard fewer people." And it's not as though with 8 people voting, they couldn't have just counted who voted.
I hope that that's not the case. I spoke to this guy. I talked to this guy. He was very open and honest with me as the chairman of this committee that he was 2 things: opposed to the bill and not going to work against me. So I think that I'm not ready to leap to the conclusion that he gave me an unfair shake. We have the option to file for reconsideration. And what we have to have is one of the no votes say that they are willing to reconsider it. If that's the case, we can get it put back on the agenda, and we can get the correct vote on it.
The truth will come out on this, though, Spike, because those 5 votes aren't going anywhere. Even if it turns into a situation where he's unwilling to reconsider it, we can show demonstrably clear with signatures that these 5 people voted for it, and
Hopefully.
it was
may not get signatures, but we've got commitment.
Yeah, we can get those. We've got those commitments, so we're going to try to get that information publicly available to show the people what happened. But again, man, those are the kind of things like allowing the chair's discretion to decide that when it's such a close vote doesn't make much sense to us at all.
There's no reason for that.
Right.
What's really funny is it led me to something that we should discuss as a policy item for next year on the agenda, and it's a light on the front of each desk. So even in a voice vote, they're sitting and hitting a button that gives a light so that we can see what the actual results of the instead of just relying on the chair's discretion to accurately call a voice vote.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There is absolutely no reason with 8 people voting that you can't, like you said, lights or even
fine.
Just, hey, what do you vote? Okay, what do you vote? What do you vote? I vote this? What do you vote? What do you like? There is no reason that they can't do that. I have been to plenty of party conventions, state party conventions, where they'll try to do it by voice vote, and there's like 100, 150, 50, however many people there, dozens or hundreds of people there, and they'll try to do a voice vote, and if it sounds even the least bit iffy on who won or who lost, now everyone has to get up and vote. It can take 15, 20 minutes to get it. You can spend close to a half hour in the voting and tabulating and everything because it's only right to make sure that it was voted on correctly. With 8 people, you can in probably about a minute find out who voted what if it's even the least bit questionable. That's beyond questionable. You had more votes for yes than you had no, and that's just
right. And they're on the record.
And you can hear it. I mean, you can.
But Spike, that's one of many fights we're going to have this year. There's something near a dozen bills that we're working on, and we plan to come back in the following year, and if we can't get this appeal through, we're going to bring this bill back. We're going to keep refining it and keep pushing it. We may be adding new legislative issues based on our members' votes for stuff like ranked choice voting and some other reforms around the election space that I think would have a very positive impact in the state. But you take it as you go, one day at a time. So.
Yeah, we gotta late start this session. In fairness, we technically didn't exist until after session had already started. So, and we still think we'll get a couple, maybe 3 bills through out of the 8 major ones that we've been pushing the whole time.
That's good. That's good. Listen, you just got to keep pushing forward. In the meantime, I'm definitely going to be putting that video up just as soon as I'm allowed to post on social media again to let people know, like, this is what happens. And it's not even behind closed doors. This is what happens on public access television for anyone who wants to watch it in the halls of positions of power that you have elected people into. this is what they do to you, and it doesn't stop until we hold them accountable.